Hey, one more thing before you go. What if the beliefs you left behind are still running you? And what if guilt, obedience, and self denial aren't virtues but inherited scripts designed to keep you small? What if there was a new way of thinking that could rewrite your soul's code? In this week's episode of One More Thing Before You Go, I sit down with Reginald Martin. He's a spiritual architect, a metaphysician. We'll talk about that. And the creator of Kemet physics. Again, we'll talk about that. It's a soul-level methodology that helps seekers, leaders, and creatives rewire the subconscious architecture of their identity. Reginald didn't just walk away from Christianity. He stepped out of a system that equated suffering with worthiness and obedience and holiness. Through ancient Kemetic sciences and modern psychological insight, Reginald creates a blueprint for liberation, not just a deconstruction, but resurrection. His work reveals how spiritual programming lingers long after we've left the church, shaping how we lead, love, and create, and more importantly, how we can rewrite it. This isn't just a conversation about belief, it's a reckoning, a remembering, and a call to reclaim your soul's original code. I'm your host, Michael Hurst. Welcome to One More Thing Before You Go. In this episode, together, we unpack how subconscious religious programming shapes our identity and limits power, why guilt is often a leash, not a compass, how Kemet physics can rewire your inner operating system, and the difference between obedience and alignment, and how to lead, create, and live from the soul, not just shame. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. So glad to be here. I'm excited.
Your life it's an amazing journey you've taken in your life.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. It has been an amazing journey. I've went through the normal ups and downs, and through that, I guess I've just learned to kind of surf the waves.
I think that's the best way to go. It's life lessons is the best educator, isn't it?
Absolutely, positively. And I think that that's one of the things that the ancients were teaching was really how do we navigate life? Because for them, we came here for a reason. We came here
Right.
by choice. And they were giving us blueprints oftentimes of how to navigate life, and
Yeah.
that's the perspective that I operate from with metaphysics.
Which I can't. I mean, it's going to be exciting to get into that, but I do like to start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I actually grew up in Dallas, Texas, so that's where I live now, and grew up in a single parent home. Grew up in poverty, so just dealing with mentality. So ended up having a lot of questions because I was in a staunch Christian family. I mean, man. When my family got together for a gathering, it was almost like a religious war broke out, and these were all Christians. So, but they had an idea that their belief in Jesus was the right belief, and anybody else that didn't kind of believe like they did, then you were suspect. so,
Yeah,
so that was kind of yeah.
yeah, I can relate to that. I grew up also with a single parent. Lost my father at a very early age, and so I respect that. And my mother, I grew up Catholic, and
Okay.
I am not a practicing Catholic. I'm here to admit, I haven't been a practicing Catholic for a really long time because of and this is my opinion. I said, they were a little hypocritical in certain aspects, and they were too overreaching in other aspects, and they didn't live up to par in many aspects. And
Hmm.
my mother did the same thing. She went. We had in my whole family, we had Catholics, we had Southern Baptists, we had Nazarenes, we had Mormons, a wide variety. So that little war you're talking about, been there, done that. Every time
Yeah.
we had a family gathering. What'd you want to be when you grew up? Did you go to college, university?
I ended up, well, I guess when I was young, I wanted to be, what did I want to be? I wanted to be in the NBA. So that was one of the things. So from a very young
Yeah.
age, man, I played basketball relentlessly. And that actually paved my way to go to college because I wouldn't have been able to pay for it any other way. I ended up getting a basketball scholarship. So that took me to actually a religious college. This college, of all things. But by that time, I considered myself atheist. So it was an interesting few years at that Christian college, but I wouldn't have traded it for anything. So I wanted to be an NBA player. Got to play against some of them in practice and stuff like that, but of course, I never made it to the NBA.
Well, life puts us on our path. Like sometimes what we're supposed to be on. I believe. I do believe in the universe putting us where we need to be.
That makes two of us.
We may not be having this conversation if you don't went the other direction, or I may have seen you at a basketball game.
Yeah,
one of the two.
Right.
You said in some of the stuff that I have read in your bio and everything else, you didn't just leave Christianity, did you? You left kind of an identity script. What was what was the moment you realized that something deeper was running in you? Because you were an atheist, even though you grew up in a very religious background. Can I ask why? What turned you into an atheist? Coming up from that background?
No, and that's a very good question because it really started when I was 15 years old, and I can just remember the age that I asked my mother a question, and and I had been pondering this for a while, these questions, but the question that I asked my mom was, I gave her a scenario. I said, "Mom," I said, "if a person who's Jewish that does not believe in Jesus as their savior, they do good all their life." And then they die and not as a believer, they're going to go to hell. This is what I'm taught. But a person who can be a mass murderer can be on their deathbed and accept Jesus as their savior on their deathbed, and they can go to heaven. So you're telling me that a person that can do good all their life, and then a person who can do bad all their life goes to heaven? I said something does not seem right about that for me. Is that true? Would that person that's Jewish go to hell? And Michael, she looked at me and she goes, "Yeah." There was no other explanation after that. It was just that was it. That was the truth, her truth, and that was it. And that answer left me with so many questions and just not really even wanting to accept something like that. That a good person could go to hell. That just seems so unfathomable to me.
Especially for
So by the
something as
time I
simple. So I'm sorry.
yeah
I say something as
no
simple
go
as
ahead.
not believing in Jesus. I mean,
Yeah, and for Christians, of course, that is the ultimate step, is just the belief in the faith that Jesus is the savior. But just the idea that a person, it didn't matter how good a person was, it was just had to
yeah.
believe and accept something.
Yeah, I find that, I mean, and this is just a personal perspective of my own. And the fact that I'm
Hmm.
watching my mother desperately trying to find a home in a church, in some form of a church or religion, because I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. We grew up poor as well, and it was very dysfunctional. Both my parents were alcoholics, and when my mother got a divorce, she was excommunicated from the Catholic Church because she couldn't go to church, couldn't take communion, all because she was divorced now. And us kids, we could go to church, but we weren't allowed to take communion either because our parents got divorced, which I which
Wow.
that's what turned me a little away from that. It's like I thought you should reach out to somebody if they're having issues or problems, or if they're alone now. You should help them. You should help the family, and it didn't happen that way. So I started questioning it about that same time in regard to, and I think you call it, you left an identity script. The identity of my mother was she was a Catholic church going woman, She went religiously every week. She went to, midnight mass. She did everything she was supposed to. But the minute she divorced, then all of a sudden you're a sinner.
Right. None of the other stuff matters.
Yeah, none of that stuff mattered. She gave money, even though, I mean, my mother was a single mother growing up in the 70s. She women in the 70s couldn't even have their own checking account until 1974. So, you could only be a server, or you could be a secretary, or you were limited with what you can do, struggling.
Mm-hmm.
But she would still always
Mm-hmm.
give to the church. But they turned their back on her. So, that's, I think that we have something in common in a way, because it was a moment for me, like a moment for you, where we realized that, something deeper was kind of
Yeah.
embedded in us that
Yeah,
really,
and Michael, what I've seen just through my practice is that so many of us, and I know that that's why I have even amassed a number of people that have followed my YouTube channel, over 100,000 people, is because many of our stories are so similar.
yeah,
So it's just your story and my story is so common
yep,
that it's ridiculous that it's so common. My mother dealt with, because of the belief of being a born sinner and stuff like that. You imagine having a child out of wedlock, which was me, at the age of 16.
yeah,
Okay. uh the idea that being sexual, being sinful, being all of that, and you are carrying your sin. you know you can't hide from what you've done. So Michael, that basically destroyed my mother mentally. She dealt with psychological issues, and have dealt with psychological issues for her whole life. And I think a big part of that was because how she was taught to see herself as something is broken and something is sinful and something was wrong with her. So I've seen that. I've lived that, through her, so a lot of those, and a lot of people have dealt with that same stuff. I know.
do you think those early beliefs in the humility, the obedience to the church kind of a thing, and the suffering, like what your mother had gone through, what my mother had gone through, things like that, do you think that shaped your sense of self to who you are today? Did it kind of,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it shaped just that. It shaped my sense of self and how I looked at myself, because I didn't know any other frame. Understand? So I
Mhm.
didn't have. So the idea that I was a born sinner, that I was a wretch, and all of that, that was supposed to be said in a way that humbles you, that
Yeah,
makes you think that you're nothing special, that those types of things. But that impacts you in so many other ways, in so many areas of your life. So that's how I grew up thinking of myself, and just interacting with the world. So, and I know from when things happen negatively in your life, the default programming was, am I being punished?
yeah,
That was one of the first thoughts. And of course, if we're being punished, then we had to accept the punishment, because there's no way that we could fight against God. And of course, if we were being punished, we were deserving of that punishment.
yeah,
It wasn't to be questioned. So yeah, so all of that training impacted me in a way that carried on for many years. And quite honestly, there's still layers that I bump into now that I didn't even realize, as you going on through life. So we
yeah.
don't just get over that stuff, overnight.
Well, I like how you call it and you refer to it as mental malware.
Mental malware, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think because it's the same thing. I walked away from that religion the organized religion a long, long time ago. When I was about 16 years old, 17 years old,
Hmm.
I'm very spiritual. I do believe that we have a higher power. I do believe that the universe, we're all connected. I mean, you and
Hmm.
I are connected. We're all connected. We're all human beings. We all have that uniqueness with us, and I do believe from that perspective. Um, but I don't believe in organized religion any longer for that same reason. I think it is mental malware. And the first time I've heard that, so I smiled just a little when I read mental malware. I thought, oh yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, or the phrase.
Yeah.
It's. Do you think that kind of mental malware? How does how does that affect our subconscious programming to show up in everyday life? I think we kind of might have just touched on it a little bit, but do you think that we are indoctrinated from that for a reason?
Yeah, I think that it ends up impacting us, and this is where I have to really go into, the Kemetic belief system, and really what one of the reasons why I got involved with the Kemetic ideas were, at first I was trying to find out about law of attraction, okay, and really trying, because having grown up in church, anytime somebody teaches something, my automatic default now is to question what they're teaching, because I was told in church not to, and that didn't go too well for me. So when I heard The Secret, I basically said, hey, let me find out if there's truth behind this, where it comes from. To make a long story short, I ended up finding out about The Secret, where it was taught and where it came from, but it also taught me or helped me to uncover some stuff about Christianity that I didn't realize was even discoverable. So a lot of the stuff that we were taught about being a born sinner, stuff like that, was actually came from ancient Kemetic or ancient Egyptian concepts that Christianity distorted. Those distortions impact us mentally and psychologically for life. And probably you grew up young, um, as a Catholic. I was indoctrinated in it from birth as a Protestant. And those of us that are indoctrinated early spend our entire lifetime getting over that indoctrination, if we ever try to get over it.
Yeah, I think to this day I still fall back into old routines sometimes,
Yep.
especially if I'm
Yep.
having. I mean, I've been through 8 operations. I went through a lot of physical therapy. I spent 4 years in a wheelchair. Was told I'd never walk again. I had a lot of reflection back on that and went back to the same methodologies that you spoke about with, what did I do wrong? I was a cop. I
Yep.
was doing my job. I was arresting a bad guy, taking a bad guy off the street. Why does he get to sit in jail, and watch TV and get his meals fixed for him and everything? And I'm sitting in a wheelchair. My kids have to grow up with that. My wife has to deal with that. I have to deal with that. Um, and I was angry and resentful and
Yes.
a little
Yes.
depressed. And again, why me? Why did this happen to me? And then I started questioning whether or not I did something wrong. And I had to stop myself.
Yep.
I
Yep.
agree with you. Even, I mean, we're men of a certain age, but even, years and years and years later, decades later, sometimes we still fall back into that because, like you said, I think you hit it. It's kind of embedded in us so deeply,
Yes.
so deeply.
It is literally mental malware. And if you don't, and if you're not aware of it, you can't even work to extract that malware from your mental system.
Yeah. Yep.
You know,
Do you think our societal systems have kind of brought the implemented or not implemented, more like integrated faith, education, leadership, and so forth to reinforce those limiting beliefs and those scripts?
I think that they do, and I think that it, on some level, society we have a religious society because we feel like religion is supposed to help us,
Yeah.
morally, faithfully, So our whole society is constructed with an underpinning of these ideas, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at them in a way that if those ideas are gone, then society will be in chaos. Well, the ideas are around and society is still in chaos. So,
That's a fact.
so again, something doesn't, it just doesn't, what we're told and then what reality is doesn't add up, that started me to questioning just so much of this stuff, I've always been like I guess an amateur psychologist, so much so that I ended up getting a degree in it in college. But I've always liked to ask, why do people do what they do? And when I, started to study religion and how that impacts us, just from an individual perspective
Yeah.
and from a societal perspective, even from, I looked at my culture and how many of us are very, very religious, but our communities are broken, and I attributed that to the idea that we are broken, or we're taught that we're broken. And from a comedic lens, the inside of us is going to be reflected back to us as life. So life becomes the feedback. So your belief system is reflected back as your life in a lot of ways.
That kind of falls along the same line of what you were talking about with the secret and manifestation, and
Hmm.
what we
Thoughts
believe.
become things.
Yeah, what we believe we become, and I wholeheartedly believe that it's an interesting perspective. Can I touch back on something that you mentioned earlier in regard to the Egyptian, um, uh, talking about the idea of the uh, we were born sinners, came from the
Hmm.
Egyptians. Can we talk about that a minute?
Now, that idea didn't come from the
Didn't come
Egyptians.
from
Okay,
Egyptians.
so
I
that
misunderstood
that
that.
was something that Christianity distorted. Okay, so the way that the Egyptians taught, and I switch between Kemetic and Egyptian. So Kemetic is just the prehistoric Egyptian societies
Okay.
that were part of that area. But the ancient Kemetic teachings was that we were all, we're first of all the metaphysical world, the world that souls come from, is the real world. Okay, so souls project into the physical. So the souls project an aspect of themselves or ourselves into the physical. Okay, that the soul is an aspect of the creator, the light of the creator, and the will of the creator being projected into the physical to experience the physical. Okay, Christianity changed that idea and said that when we were souls projected into the physical, instead of a projection, we failed because we were punished. Okay, that's the idea of the angel, that Lucifer or Satan was the angel that rebelled against God. But from a Kemetic perspective, Satan was actually simply the idea of us falling into duality. Okay, so Satan, which was the ancient Egyptian idea of Set, which was the letters ST, became the idea of opposition. Okay. Later, that word became Satan through the Hebrew idea, and even the Hebrew idea, the word meant, the original meaning of Satan was adversary. Okay, not evil, not the devil, or anything like that. So, in that context, it had the same meaning of the as the ancient Egyptian idea of simple opposition. Okay, so from a Kemetic perspective, we are all born divine. We are the divine emanation, or a fragment of the divine emanation experiencing life as a creator. So we're born divine, not sinful. That's the Kemetic perspective on
That's what an interesting and unique perspective. I think that got lost with time, and like you said, it was distorted to a point that it's unrecognizable in reality from that. That's brilliant. You just opened my eyes and my mind. I'm going to do a little more research myself because I think I have found that a new path to go down to kind of check out. So, from a kinetic perspective, what is chemetaphysics, and like how does it differ from traditional metaphysical or spiritual teachings along that line?
the only difference is that it is through the Kemetic lens. Okay, so
Mm.
what I had to do is I was teaching what was called Kemetic spirituality for a long time. But what I found was is that there's already a preconceived notion of what Kemetic was. Okay, and which was basically teaching history.
Mm.
Teaching the historical aspects of really ancient African spirituality. But that also made people, when I talked about Kemetic, it made people assume a a historical perspective.
Right.
Okay, but I wanted to talk about the spiritual system, which was more about metaphysics and the idea of spirituality. Okay, so outside of the context of history, a lot of times. So I coined the phrase Kemetaphysics, which is the ancient idea. The Ka is the ancient Egyptian idea of the soul. Okay, and then metaphysics, of course, is the philosophy of spirituality, is what it is. So I coined the phrase metaphysics so I could reposition myself away from historical ideas and teachings to more, let's talk about the how this stuff impacts us on a daily basis from a spiritual and metaphysical perspective. So that's what metaphysics is. So it's the idea of the Egyptian Ka, which was their term for the soul, and then metaphysics.
I think that, I believe, obviously I believe we all have a soul, and I think that the soul lives on, after we depart this world and we come back again, which is what the Egyptians have always believed. Obviously,
Yes,
they always buried
always.
they buried them with everything so that they knew they were coming back, and you had this, and you had this with you when you come back, kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
how does Do you think that based upon that theory, that methodology, that practice, do you think our soul has a blueprint? I mean, from what I've
Yes.
learned in my conversations over the last almost 6 years now, I've had a lot of conversations with we as an individual have a blueprint that we can go back and kind of check and look and say, oh, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that, and this one I'm supposed to learn this. I'll come back until I relearn it or figure it out or whatever, and then I can move on to the next level. Does Kemetic science kind of follow along the same lines about
Yes.
the soul blueprint?
Yes. Yes. They actually are the ones who instituted a lot of those ideas. So the idea of I don't know if you've heard of the what they call the god Osiris, and then
Hmm.
in the Greek, that's the Greek name for it, and then the god Heru or Horus. Okay, or the two Greek names. Well, this is actually connected back to the idea of Jesus Christ. This is where this idea came
Hmm.
from, Jesus Christ. But in ancient Kemetic terms, these were two different functions of nature, okay, which they call netters. Okay, so Horus, which was Heru in ancient Egypt, and Asar in ancient Egypt was the idea of the Christ. Okay, but these were functions, two separate functions that Christianity fused together to make the idea of Jesus Christ. What Jesus Christ was actually a Gnostic personification of the idea of the revealer, okay? Which is basically think of the concept of us having aha moments. Okay. The light bulb comes on. Okay, the idea that when we go through and have our aha moments, then we become enlightened, and it ends up on some level bringing peace within our life, peace and reconciliation. That's the idea of the Christ, the KRST. Okay, these concepts, Michael, are a part of all spiritual systems. It is only Christianity that has basically historicized these ideas, where in reality they were ancient philosophical concepts personified.
I find it interesting that, I have Native American friends and family, and, they kind of follow along what you speak about with that connection with the universe in that way, and Mother Nature and the earth, and
Yes,
what our soul is supposed to do, and how we interact with each other in regard to all of that in particular. Not necessarily
yes,
in a specific religious aspect. This is, you got to believe this, you can't believe that, you got to do this, you can't do that. They believe in harmony with nature. They believe in harmony with our soul, and so that's, I find that interesting, because you go from ancient Egypt, for example, and then you see Native Americans who they never met, at least that we know of. I should
right,
I
right,
should put
right.
that out there to put that out
There,
there.
there are some. You can go back and they might have met
A
some,
little
but
overlapping
even
there,
still,
yes.
but yeah, but I get what you're saying, and you're the connection that you're making as far as the similarities. Really, when you start looking at spiritual systems around the world, the outlier is Christianity.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Same thing with Buddhist, with Zen, with
Yep,
everything.
yep,
All these philosophies that go along this same line about the spirituality, how we're connected, how our souls connect to the universe and one source, and live
yep,
on. I have
yep.
found, at least in my experiences as well, I have found that the only, again, outlier, like you said, is the religious aspect, the organized religious aspect. That's it.
The dogma.
Yes, dogma. Yes, you know, you you
Yeah,
you 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 live once. You either die, you go to heaven, you go to hell, or you go to
yep,
purgatory. In Catholic, you had purgatory. So if you did something really bad, you were in purgatory forever. It means your soul wandered around forever, no place to go. So,
right.
um, yeah, I mean, the rest of my day, I know what I'm doing from the rest of my day is
Well, let
exploring
me
this.
give you let me give you some and your audience some ideas that they can go and research, because what will happen is invariably, and this is what I've found and researched for over 20 years, Michael, to confirm a lot of these ideas. So I'm just not like making them up. I can back them up. Okay, but look up the idea of Platonic theophacy. Okay, and this is why I say Platonic theophacy, because Plato actually distilled a lot of the ancient Egyptian teachings into what became his theophacy. But you got to understand too that around the Mediterranean, back in the third and fourth centuries BCE, they were all teaching these ideas all around the Mediterranean. Okay, so it wasn't just the Greeks, it wasn't just the Egyptians that were talking about these ideas. It was all around the Mediterranean that spread from the Mediterranean into the Eastern religions and or Eastern spiritual systems. But the Platonic theophacy, when you understand it, then you'll start to understand actually what Christianity changed. Okay, because again, the idea from a Kemetic perspective, the idea that we call Jesus actually came from the Kemetic idea of Yeusa, Iusa, and the Y and I are interchangeable in ancient times. Yeusa is the primordial light fragmenting and dispersing into physicality. Okay, So that primordial light is in all of us. That word Yeusa, Y or IUSA, became Yeshua in Hebrew. Okay, and the SA was just SH is simply a little different nuance about the fire. Okay, Yeshua or Yeusa in Greek became Jesus, IUSEOUS, Jesus. Okay, so that name, you can track the name changes through languages, but once you get to see what the names actually were meant philosophically, then you'll see that it changed from a philosophy to a person with Christianity. And what I like to say is that what was new in Christianity was not true, and what was true was not new. So
It,
you can trace all of this back thousands of years, and you can see where Platonic theosophy is talked about in many different spiritual systems. Many different spiritual systems have saviors, but they're not literal.
it's not literal. That's interesting. That's yeah. I'm gonna thank you, Richard. I'm down another rabbit hole.
It's fascinating, I'm telling you.
It is yes, it's always fascinated me, and obviously we're all seeking. We are all hopefully we are all always seeking information, knowledge, and the desire to get a deeper understanding of number one,
Yeah,
why we're here,
yeah.
who we are, why we're here, what we're here for, and so forth. Do you think help decoding? Do you think Kemetic science helps us to access our soul's original blueprint to allow us to understand from that perspective of who we
Oh,
are and why we're
absolutely.
here?
Absolutely. It liberates us, and this is what another thing that I like to say is a lot of times Christians think I'm attacking Christianity, but I'm not. What I'm doing is helping people get beyond, especially people that have deconstructed,
Um,
helping them get beyond the guilt, the shame for even questioning. Okay. But also giving them a way to reconstruct. Because for me, having been an atheist for a while, I deconstructed, but I stayed in that limbo state for almost 20 years, because I didn't know anything else. But Kemetic science helped me to reconstruct in a way that it actually empowered me to see myself as a soul having a human experience and to understand that we are here to learn forever, not burn forever. Okay.
that's a nice. I like
So
it.
so it will actually the what I like to say is the truth is more empowering than the lie that we were taught through religion. And religion's the dogma is a lie.
Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. I like those statements. Um, I know you guide. Speaking of that, you guide people through identity resurrection. I think that identity resurrection is a unique way of putting. I almost say reborn, but for us to
That's a
realize
good way
that,
to put it.
yeah,
You're speaking the ancient language. That's what this stuff meant.
yeah. So I think that what does that process look like when we put it into practice? I mean, I think we all. It's interesting. I get so excited. I want to start talking really fast, and then there's so many questions that are still like running around in my head. It's interesting the way this all pieces together because I think that as I always believe this and I practice this, I know that there is something bigger out there for us. I know that there is more opportunity for us as a human being, as an individual, as a spiritual being. So, in helping somebody through this identity resurrection, this rebirth kind of a purpose, what does that process look like for if somebody wanted to go through it?
Yeah, and part of that is like I teach in my classes, my content on Substack is how I help people through that. But what that looks like is that first you have to literally get rid of that frame that you are given of being a born sinner. Okay. And a lot of people can logically say, oh, that, that doesn't make sense. But when you're deconstructing, you need to be able to reconstruct too. Okay. So the reconstructing part is to go back to the ancient teachings, the ancient Kemetic teachings, which was the source of these ideas. And I can show you through the classes, courses, articles, the stuff that the content that I do, I can literally show you what it meant before it was distorted. And in that way, you're able to say, okay, yeah, that doesn't even make sense. This makes more sense. And it gives you a new frame to think inside, okay, to think about your life in a new context. So instead of being a born sinner, ancient Kemetic teachings are you are born divine. And let me explain this philosophically because it actually makes more sense than what we were taught as Christians. So Christianity teaches us that the creator created the world and then created mankind and humankind, okay? And we are his creation to do as the creator sees fit, whatever. Okay. We need to form a relationship with the creator because and form a relationship of something that is external to us. Okay. We need to believe that the creator came down as this one particular special being and incarnated to, save us from this original sin. But the ancient Kemetic teachings are is that there is only one source of all creation in the entire universe, whether that be physical, metaphysical, different planets, different solar systems, whatever. There's one creator and one source. So the analogy that I like to use to explain the ancient Kemetic concept is if you think of the creator as an ocean of consciousness, okay? Everything is in that ocean and imbued with that consciousness, that life, that fire, everything. That includes us. So we can consider ourselves drops in that ocean, okay? But we are also oceans in the drop, or the ocean is also in the drop, okay? So we are one and the same. The drops are not the same magnitude as the ocean, but we are the same stuff. So, in that sense, it's a new frame to think of yourself as being born divine. You are the creator, you are the source being living as a human for a short time. That's a whole new frame to think about yourself in. Okay. That's part of reconstructing, is to first change that old belief that something is wrong with you, that you're broken and that you need saving to the new idea that you are born divine and your life is about recognizing and developing that divinity within you. It's about developing yourself as that spark and learning the power that you have to create your life on your terms.
I love
That's
that.
reconstruction.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I've never agreed with the concept that we are born with as a sinner. My wife's grandfather was a preacher, and he his whole life he and his wife both traveled everywhere all over the world, and because that was their calling, and I respect that. But he used to always send this stuff to the kids, our kids. I have two daughters. We have two daughters. Um, that was just a little slip. Sorry, Diane. We have two daughters, and the he would send these things all the time, and he'd send them like a birthday gift, and it'd be a little check, a little something, and then he'd put in this stuff in there about you're born a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner. And I finally had to have a conversation with him where I said, please don't do that anymore because I'm just throwing that stuff away. And I'm throwing it away because I cannot believe, and I do not believe, that we are born as a sinner, that you have not committed any sins yet. You are just born. You don't know what sin is. You don't know what's right, what's wrong, what to do here, what to do there. You don't know what that is, so you can't be born a sinner. So please stop doing that. So it took a little
So agree
while,
with that.
took several conversations. He finally stopped sending the material because I said, I'm just throwing it away. He said, well, give it to somebody else. I said, I'm not going to give it to somebody else because I don't believe in what you're doing with regard to this. These are children. When a baby's born and you look that baby in the eye, I'm looking down like I'm looking at the baby. You look
Hmm.
down at that baby and you see that joy and the light and the life in that child. There is no way that that child is a sinner. That child is a gift. It just irritates me
Michael,
immensely.
when you start to think about it and analyze it, it makes absolutely no sense
No sense.
logically.
Other than to,
But because we're told to believe,
yeah,
we accepted it.
yep. There's that indoctrination. We can call it. We just call it like it is. It's like an indoctrination. How
Yeah,
can
it's mental malware.
it is? I'm going to use that. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to borrow that from you because
You go right ahead.
I love that analogy. How can we begin to reprogram our guilt, our shame, or in the root of all that if we were indoctrinated? That malware is in our head. Do you have any tips that we, as an individual, can maybe
Yeah,
start to
and it
recognize?
starts with absolutely, and it starts with breaking that old frame.
Yeah,
Just like I was discussing about the idea of being born a born sinner or born divine. Really, which one makes more sense?
yeah,
You know? So as soon as you break that frame and you release those beliefs, then the all the tentacles that were streaming from that belief of being a born sinner is shattered.
yeah,
You just need somewhere else to go then, okay? And then you can go to and once you start to research these ideas and you recognize that there is only one source and that you are from that source, it's easy to understand and accept that you are born divine.
yes,
So the difference between Christianity or and any really any the I'll have to speak to Christianity because that's what I know.
right,
The difference between Christianity and spirituality, or the difference between religion and spirituality, is the idea. Religion says that God is something outside of us that we must form a relationship with. It's external. Okay, it's not even a part of us. It's an external thing that we have to get its blessings. We have to get everything okayed. You know, we have to hopefully do the right thing to where God will accept us. Okay, and one of those things, of course, God is unconditionally loving, except for the condition that you got to accept Jesus. If you don't accept that condition, then the unconditional is not acceptable.
yeah.
Okay.
It's a it's yeah. I have to laugh. That's all we can do is laugh because it's interesting. It is. You go back to God is loving. God is all loving, unless you do this or you don't do this or you do
Yep.
this or you
Yep.
don't do this. And and I'm pointing to the do's and the don'ts for anybody
Yeah. Yeah.
that's and to me it's like, okay, well, you can be all loving or you can be you can't be both. Number one, I think that I have always believed and I've come to believe in the fact that we're all from one source. And, I do believe that there is a power there. I do believe that there's a God there. I do believe that we're all from the same source. That's why I believe we're all connected. We are all connected. We're all one
Yes.
big family. It just, there's
Absolutely.
a lot of sibling rivalry from,
And a lot of it is caused because many people want to believe that they have the exclusive, being the chosen people or whatever. You know, I
yes,
mean, come on.
yes, yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes, yes.
and that's just again, it becomes when you go back to the ancient concepts, the idea that we are all one, it makes so much more sense, you know. And then even the idea of a chosen people from an this is something
Yeah.
I actually wrote about on my Substack blog here last week about the idea of the chosen people, and really the chosen people is a self choice of following the universal laws, and which is one of those is understanding that you are connected to everything.
And that
It's not
includes
something outside of you.
includes the earth
Go ahead.
where we
Yes,
live, includes
yes,
Mother Nature.
yeah, absolutely. Earth is alive, you know. So absolutely. So and I even go to Michael. This is not the only place that there is life. The Earth. There
Yeah,
has we have trillions of stars. What are the odds that we are the only life in the entire universe?
yeah. Arrogance would have you believe otherwise. Arrogance
Yeah,
and
you know,
ignorance.
arrogance and ignorance. And I like to say a lot of times that Christians can be arrogant in their ignorance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're not
You
bashing
know?
Christians. If
Yeah,
that's what you feel and that's what you want, and that's fine. I respect that. But I think we all have the opportunity to open our eyes and kind of open our hearts, our minds, and our souls. The whole idea, as we as human beings, is to connect our mind, our body, and our soul to live a valued life and to move that life forward in a positive way and for those around us in the same form. So, in doing
yes.
so, the best way to do that is to seek the knowledge, gain the knowledge, and grasp the knowledge that allows us to connect our mind, our body, and our soul in how we connect to the universe, and then put that forward in our own lives in those people around us.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the ultimate deal with all of that, Michael, is that how do we want to live our life? You know,
yes,
how do we want to express who we are through this life? You know, and one of the ways that the ancient Egyptians taught that was you live life through your joy. You know, you let joy be the guide for you really finding your purpose,
yeah,
connecting to your soul's purpose. When you act through joy, which is the same vibration, because I don't see the creator as a being. Okay, the ancient Egyptians didn't see it as a being. It is a field, a force that all of us can interact with
it's
to
an energy,
create the life that we desire. It's an energy. Yeah,
an
you
energy,
know,
an energy.
and using that from an energetic perspective, that's really how you end up integrating mind, body, and soul. And when you understand that you live life from your joy, then you won't accept ideas of sacrifice, of being a born sinner, of being all this negativity that ends up being
Yep,
vibrationally antithetical to living life through love and peace and joy.
I agree. Well said. Profound. Well said. Do you think there's an in between space that we should be aware of?
We go through it every night when we dream. You're literally more aware and conscious when you are asleep, and you go into
Mm,
that in between state, and you commiserate with people, with your past, your loved ones, past lives. You commiserate with all of that when you're sleeping. That's why dreams can seem so real.
real. Yeah. That's an interesting way. I hadn't thought about the dream state being the in between. It really, and to be honest, when you think about the in between, and again, this is just remnants of stuff still embedded in my head, which I know are false, but it reminds me of like purgatory. That's what
Okay.
that's what
Okay.
the Catholics put it. You were in purgatory. That's kind of in between. You're not in heaven. You're not in hell. You're in purgatory. You wander around aimlessly for eternity, not knowing where to go, what to do, you know,
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
direction you
that
should be.
they distorted so many of these teachings, and a lot of it they've accumulated the distortions over centuries. So they've had centuries to
Yeah,
put a lot of this stuff together, but that was not part of the original teachings. From the ancient Kemetic perspective, there are basically three levels. Okay, so there is what we call the heavens. Then there is the middle area, which they call the duat, and then there is physical earth or the physical plane. But they are all different vibrational constructs that we can experience at any time. Okay, but the idea of you going to hell for eternity and stuff like that, they had no concepts like that. As a matter of fact, the idea of the lake of fire was actually where souls are born. In other words, the lake of fire is the creator, the will, and the will of the creator was imaged, or use of the light and fire was a metaphor for that the will of the creator that fragments into reality and into the universe. But the lake of fire was the birthplace of souls, okay, not the end place. So again, it's a different shift. They literally flipped so many of these ideas to make it something negative and controlling when it wasn't supposed to be that way.
It is. I think that we have an opportunity as an individual, as a human being, as a soul, to have a deeper reflection in regard to why, again, I said it earlier, why we're here, what our purpose is, how we can integrate, and how we can improve ourselves. And I think that you present that in, let's talk about how somebody can connect to, let me try that again in English. Let's talk about how somebody can connect with you and learn more about Kemet physics and how they can improve themselves, or open that up.
Yeah, so the place now, to simplest place is just go to my Substack, and that's a newsletter that I do, that I write and teach on a lot of these concepts. So I have articles just about every other day, just things that I'm teaching these ideas. But reginaldmartin.substack.com, and then through that, that's kind of like a portal for everything that I do. And but I also have a YouTube channel. I don't do a lot of new content on YouTube, but I have a repository of over 1,000 videos that I've done over the years on YouTube that people still go to. And those are a couple of places. But Substack, reginaldmartin.substack.com, that's like the portal, and then you can go from there, and I can send you in a lot of different directions, just depending on what your interests might be. But you have an interest in learning about Platonic theosophy and all that, I'm writing articles and stuff about that, so I'm always teaching, and it's just something I love to do.
And you have classes on there as well, correct?
I have courses that
Courses and
that you
classes.
can connect to through my Substack. So just through the newsletter, you get an email. So I have different resources that you can go. So our classes, I've actually just recently I created an AI that has that I've trained on everything that I know and teach over the years, all my research and other people's research from a metaphysical perspective, and they can actually tap into that, learn. They can use it to learn. They can use it to create content, all stuff. So, and that's at soulpreneur.ai.
Okay, I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. Everybody has an easy way to just click and go, and that'll help hopefully connect people to you a little easier. This is one more thing before you go. Do you have any words of wisdom that you can share with everybody?
I would say the one thing is to learn how to be your own standard for your life. And I like to say, live life on your terms without guilt or shame. And in a lot of ways, we were taught that that was selfish to do. But when you live life through your joy, then you can spread joy and that level of consciousness into the universe. Other people can connect with it as well. Live life on your terms. Live it through joy.
Brilliant, brilliant, profound words of wisdom. I think that we all should all heed those. Reginald, thank you very much for being on the program. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your journey. I greatly appreciate it. I hope that we've touched some people's lives.
Thank you for having me here, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Reginald Martin reminds us that freedom doesn't begin with beliefs, it begins with awareness. That guilt isn't a guide, it's a ghost, and that our power isn't outside of it, it's buried beneath the scripts we were handed. Metaphysics isn't just a framework, it's a soul-level resurrection, a return to the truth. We've always known, but we're taught to forget, because sometimes the most sacred awakening begins with just one more thing before you go. So that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you found it inspirational, motivational, and a new perspective to take with you. I certainly did. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us. It really helps us to continue bringing you incredible stories and insights like this one. And if you want to watch this episode, head over to YouTube and catch the full video version. We'd also like to hear from you. If you have questions, any ideas, or you think you make a great guest, or you have commentary in regard to this episode, please reach out and let's connect. This show thrives on this because of this amazing community, and I appreciate each and every one of you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go. Check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.